The notice was taped to his garage door before sunrise. By noon, it had already turned into a violation. It wasn't vague, it wasn't a warning. It was a formal citation from the Homeowners Association, printed on letterhead, citing a community appearance disruption caused by an electric vehicle charger visible in his driveway. The fine was modest, but the language was not. It ordered immediate removal and scheduled a follow-up inspection within 72 hours. He read it once, then again. He did not tear it down. He photographed it where it was, including the timestamp on his phone and the address number mounted above the door. By evening, a second email arrived. The HOA's compliance officer stated that charging equipment was not permitted in open view, that prior notices had been ignored, and that continued non-compliance could result in escalating penalties, including daily fines. There was no reference to a specific rule number, no citation of the governing documents, just certainty. He did not reply. The charger itself was unremarkable, a wall-mounted unit installed by a licensed electrician, permitted by the city, inspected and signed off months earlier. The cable ran neatly from the unit to the vehicle parked fully within the driveway. No extension cords, no modifications, nothing temporary. The next morning, an HOA vehicle slowed in front of his house. He watched from the kitchen as the compliance officer stepped out, phone raised, photographing the driveway from multiple angles. The officer did not knock, he did not attempt conversation. He took photos, typed something into a tablet, and left. An hour later, a second violation appeared in the HOA portal. This one added language. The charger was now described as equipment-altering visual uniformity. The driveway itself was listed as subject to parking enforcement review. The fines doubled. He downloaded the citation as a PDF. He saved the metadata. He noted the inspection time. Still, he did not argue. Instead, he opened the association's governing documents and read them as if he were preparing a report, not a defense. He highlighted the sections on architectural control, on utilities, on owner rights. He found nothing addressing vehicle charging equipment, nothing restricting lawful use of a permitted electrical installation on private property. That afternoon, the HOA sent a community-wide email. It announced that the association was addressing unapproved driveway modifications to preserve neighborhood standards. No names were mentioned, no addresses, but attached was a blurred photo that was not blurred enough. It was his driveway. Neighbors noticed. Some asked questions. He answered none. That night, he filed a records request. It was brief, polite, sent through the HOA's official portal. He requested copies of all policies governing electric vehicle charging, driveway equipment, and parking enforcement criteria. He asked for the enforcement log related to his address, including inspection dates and photographs. He requested confirmation of which committee authorized the citations and under what provision. The request was automatically acknowledged. The next day, the HOA escalated. A revised notice stated that the driveway was now considered part of common enforcement jurisdiction for visual compliance purposes. It added a new allegation that charging constituted extended parking activity inconsistent with community norms. The fine schedule was updated accordingly. For the first time, a deadline appeared. Remove the charger within 7 days or incur daily penalties. He did not remove it. He moved nothing. He altered nothing. He continued charging the vehicle exactly as before, but he documented everything. Each time the car was plugged in, he noted the start and stop times. He saved utility statements showing off-peak charging hours. He downloaded municipal guidelines confirming residential EV charging was a permitted accessory use. He archived the city permit approval and inspection sign-off. On the 6th day, the HOA responded to his records request, not with documents, with a denial.
They stated the materials were internal enforcement communications and not subject to owner disclosure. They added that the association was well within its authority and that continued resistance could result in lien consideration if fines accrued. For the first time, the HOA sounded confident. They believed the paperwork was enough. The following morning, another inspection occurred. This time, the compliance officer was accompanied by a board member. They stood in the street. They took photos. One of them pointed at the charger cable and laughed. By evening, a final notice arrived. The fines had been formally assessed. The driveway was officially listed under parking enforcement review. The email concluded with a sentence that would later matter more than anyone realized. Failure to comply confirms ongoing violation. He saved that sentence. He did not respond. He scheduled a consultation with a municipal code officer instead, and he brought every document with him.
The city code officer did not offer opinions. He reviewed documents. He examined the electrical permit, the inspection sign-off, and the utilities' published residential charging guidance. He walked the driveway once, measured nothing, touched nothing, and confirmed only what already existed. The charger was permanent, permitted, and compliant. "There's no municipal issue here," he said. "Private association rules are separate." That was all. The homeowner thanked him and left without asking for anything else. No letter, no citation, no confrontation. The HOA escalated that same afternoon. A new notice arrived titled "Corrective Action Required." It stated that because the homeowner had declined to comply, the association would begin documenting daily violations. The notice attached 3 new photographs taken from the street, each labeled with a date and time. It also included a new claim that the cable, when connected, constituted temporary obstruction of driveway aesthetics. This time, a rule number was included. It was the parking rule. The homeowner read it carefully. The rule governed parking overnight of vehicles on common streets. It did not mention driveways. It did not mention equipment. It did not mention electricity. He did not point this out. Instead, he complied precisely. He unplugged the vehicle during daylight hours. He charged only overnight during off-peak utility windows. He documented the exact times. He saved the utility usage logs. He ensured the vehicle remained fully within the driveway at all times. The charger remained visible. 2 days later, the HOA issued another violation. This one cited daytime visibility. The photos attached showed the cable hanging neatly against the wall, unplugged, no active charging. The HOA had now cited both charging and not charging. The homeowner saved the notice and updated his log. At this point, if you're following along and want to see how quiet documentation turns into leverage, this is a good moment to subscribe. Not because this story moves fast, but because real outcomes happen slowly and the details matter.
The next escalation arrived as a certified letter. The HOA board informed him that his driveway had been added to a special enforcement category due to non-cooperative behavior. This allowed for discretionary inspections without notice. The letter stated that the board had reviewed the matter internally and was confident in its authority. The confidence was important. So was the phrase "internally reviewed." The homeowner responded for the first time, not with an argument, with a request. He asked the HOA to identify the specific architectural guideline violated by the charger's presence, the date on which the board voted to classify his driveway under special enforcement, and whether any other homeowners with visible charging equipment had been cited under the same rule. He requested the response in writing. The HOA replied within hours. They declined to answer the comparative question. They stated that board votes were confidential. They reaffirmed that the charger violated community standards and that enforcement discretion was permitted. They attached another fine notice. The fines were now large enough to matter. Neighbors began to notice the enforcement vehicle stopping repeatedly. Some assumed the homeowner was stubborn, others assumed he was wrong. The HOA did nothing to correct those assumptions. The homeowner continued controlled compliance. He installed a small, unobtrusive cable holder, manufacturer recommended, wall-mounted, permitted under the same electrical code. The cable was now fully flush against the wall when not in use. Nothing hung, nothing moved. The next inspection occurred the following morning. Another violation was issued. This one cited equipment presence regardless of use. That sentence locked the position. The homeowner added it to his file. He now had citations for charging, not charging, daytime presence, nighttime presence, equipment visibility regardless of use, all under a parking rule, all documented. The HOA scheduled a hearing. The letter stated that failure to attend would result in automatic affirmation of fines. The date was set 2 weeks out. The board expressed confidence that the matter would be resolved quickly. Internally, they believed they had won. They had paperwork, they had photos, they had fines accruing daily. The homeowner had said almost nothing. At the hearing, the homeowner did not bring witnesses, he did not bring a lawyer. He brought a binder. He asked one question at the start. Is the board asserting that my permitted electrical equipment violates the parking rule even when the vehicle is not present? The board chair answered without hesitation, yes. The secretary noted it in the minutes. The homeowner nodded. He asked no further questions. The fines were affirmed. The HOA sent a summary letter the next day confirming their decision and reiterating enforcement authority over driveway equipment. That letter became the centerpiece because now, for the first time, the HOA had formally claimed jurisdiction over a utility installation governed by city code, using a rule written for street parking. They believed they had closed the case. They had not noticed the trap finish closing.
The homeowner did not appeal the hearing. He paid nothing. He argued nothing. He did not send a rebuttal. Instead, he sent a single certified letter to the city. It was not a complaint. It was a request for clarification. He attached the HOA's final decision letter and asked whether a private association could regulate permitted electrical equipment through a parking ordinance and whether such regulation conflicted with municipal utility code or inspection authority. He requested a written response. The city acknowledged receipt 3 days later. The HOA did not know. During that window, enforcement continued. A new inspection occurred. Another citation was issued. Identical language, new date. The fine ledger grew. The HOA sent automated reminders warning of escalating consequences, including potential lien review. The homeowner saved every message.
Then the city responded. The letter was neutral, professional. It did not accuse, it did not threaten. It stated only that residential EV charging equipment, when permitted and inspected, fell under municipal electrical code, and that no parking regulation extended to equipment fixed to private property. The letter concluded with one sentence that mattered. Quote, if enforcement actions restrict lawful use of permitted equipment, jurisdictional conflict may exist. End quote. The homeowner forwarded the letter to the HOA. No commentary, no interpretation, just the document. 2 days passed. Then the HOA replied. They stated the city's position was not controlling and that the association's authority derived from its governing documents. They reaffirmed fines. They warned that continued refusal to comply could trigger legal action. The homeowner did nothing. He waited. The city followed up. Not with him, with the HOA. The city requested copies of the association's rules authorizing regulation of permitted electrical installations,
and asked whether the HOA claimed enforcement authority overlapping municipal code. The request was sent through official channels. It required a response. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting. They did not invite the homeowner. They believed this was a misunderstanding that could be resolved internally. Their response to the city was brief. It asserted that the HOA was not regulating electrical equipment, only visual impact related to parking and aesthetics. It cited the same parking rule. The city replied again. They asked why enforcement occurred when the vehicle was not present. They requested clarification on how a parking rule applied to fixed equipment. They asked whether similar equipment at other properties had been cited. Those questions were documentable. The HOA did not answer all of them. They provided partial responses. They avoided comparisons. They reiterated discretion. That omission was recorded. Meanwhile, the homeowner received another automated fine notice. The amount was now significant. At this point, most people would panic. This is usually where arguments happen, where emails turn emotional, where mistakes are made. He did none of that. He sent one more request to the HOA. He asked for the enforcement log showing inspections of other driveways for similar equipment during the same period. He referenced the city's inquiry. He requested confirmation of whether enforcement had been uniform. The HOA denied the request. They cited privacy. That denial was also documentable. The city issued a formal notice. It stated that based on the HOA's own correspondence, enforcement actions appeared to regulate permitted utility equipment under a non-applicable rule. The city advised that continued enforcement could interfere with municipal authority and expose the association to review. The HOA forwarded that notice to their legal counsel. Counsel reviewed the file. For the first time, someone outside the board read the citations side by side. Charging, not charging, presence regardless of use, parking rule applied to a wall-mounted device. The pattern was obvious. Counsel advised a pause. The board declined. They believed backing down would look like weakness. They believed the homeowner would eventually comply. They believed fines would force resolution. They issued one more violation. This one included a warning about lien initiation. That warning triggered the final step. The homeowner filed a declaratory relief action, not for damages, not for revenge. He asked the court to determine whether the HOA had authority to regulate permitted EV charging equipment through parking enforcement and whether fines issued under that theory were valid. He attached the HOA's own notices, every one of them. The city filed a statement of interest, not against the HOA, on the question of jurisdiction. The HOA was served. For the first time, enforcement stopped. No inspections, no photos, no notices. The board told residents the matter was under review. Privately, they believed the case was narrow. They believed they could argue aesthetics. They believed the court would defer to association discretion. They believed the paperwork was still on their side. What they did not understand was that the trap was never about interpretation. It was about consistency, and they had documented none. The HOA's attorney filed first. The motion was framed as procedural, not defensive. It argued that the court lacked authority to interfere with private contractual governance, that the homeowner had voluntarily agreed to HOA rules, and that aesthetic enforcement fell squarely within board discretion. The filing was confident. It cited precedent favoring association autonomy. The HOA resumed internal enforcement planning. They did not restart inspections, but they did not withdraw fines either. The ledger remained open, interest continued to accrue. The board circulated a memo assuring members that the matter was routine and that the association's authority was secure. Neighbors saw nothing change. From the outside, it looked like the HOA was winning. The homeowner's response was brief. He did not dispute the association's right to enforce rules. He did not challenge the existence of architectural standards. He did not argue aesthetics. He asked the court to answer one narrow question. whether the HOA's own enforcement record demonstrated regulation of permitted utility equipment through a parking rule that did not apply. He attached exhibits. Only exhibits. The court scheduled a hearing. In the weeks leading up to it, the HOA's attorney requested settlement discussions. The tone was measured. They suggested a compromise, removal of the charger in exchange for partial fine forgiveness. No admission, no precedent. The homeowner declined.
Not in anger, not with commentary. He declined in writing, stating only that he sought clarity, not concession. That decision mattered. At the hearing, the HOA argued first. They emphasized discretion. They argued that visibility alone could constitute a violation. They stated that the board acted in good faith to preserve community standards. They warned that limiting HOA authority would invite chaos. The judge listened. Then the homeowner's exhibits were addressed. The court reviewed the citations chronologically. The first citation penalized charging. The second penalized equipment visibility. The third penalized non-use. The fourth penalized presence regardless of activity. All cited the same parking rule. The judge asked a single question. How does a parking rule apply when no vehicle is parked? The HOA's attorney answered carefully. He said the rule was applied broadly to regulate driveway appearance related to parking behavior. The judge asked another question. Is the equipment movable? No. Is it temporary? No. Is it permitted by the city? Yes. The judge paused. The city's statement of interest was then addressed. The city did not argue HOA authority in general. It did not take sides. It stated only that permitted electrical installations fell under municipal code and that enforcement actions restricting their use could conflict with that authority. The HOA objected. They argued that no restriction existed because the homeowner could remove the charger. That answer changed the room. The judge asked whether the HOA claimed authority to require removal of permitted utility equipment under a parking rule. The HOA's attorney hesitated. He attempted to reframe. The judge referred back to the HOA's own final decision letter. The sentence was read aloud. Equipment presence, regardless of use, constitutes a violation. Silence followed.
The first time, the HOA did not look confident, but they still believed they could recover. They argued that even if the rule was imperfectly applied, the board acted within its discretion and any error was harmless. They suggested remanding the matter back to the HOA for reconsideration. That suggestion felt reasonable. The audience would believe it. The homeowner did not object. Instead, he submitted one final exhibit. It was the HOA's denial of his records request. Specifically, the refusal to disclose whether similar equipment at other homes had been cited. The judge asked why that information was withheld. The HOA cited privacy. The judge asked whether enforcement had been uniform. The HOA could not answer. The judge closed the hearing. The decision was issued 2 weeks later. It did not declare the HOA malicious. It did not award damages. It did not criticize motives. It did something quieter. The court ruled that the HOA's enforcement record demonstrated application of a parking regulation to fixed permitted utility equipment beyond the scope of that rule. As a result, fines issued under that theory were unenforceable. Further, the court held that the HOA could not require removal or restriction of permitted electrical equipment absent a specific, properly adopted rule addressing such equipment. The fines were voided. The enforcement category designation was nullified. The HOA retained general authority, but lost credibility on this issue. The HOA circulated a notice stating that enforcement policies were being updated. No apology was issued. The homeowner did nothing. He did not post online. He did not confront neighbors. He did not speak at the next meeting. He plugged in his vehicle that night, charging quietly, legally. The system had corrected itself. The HOA did not announce the loss.
There was no email to residents explaining the ruling, no acknowledgement that fines had been voided. The board's notice referenced only policy clarification and alignment with municipal standards. The fines disappeared from the homeowner's account quietly. No refund was issued because no payment had been made. The enforcement ledger showed zero balance, as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. Within weeks, a revised architectural guideline was circulated for comment. It proposed restrictions on future exterior equipment installations, including electric vehicle chargers. The language was careful. The effective date was prospective. The board scheduled a vote. The homeowner read the draft and said nothing. At the meeting, attendance was higher than usual. Residents asked whether existing chargers would be affected. The board answered that the rule would apply only going forward. Someone asked why the rule was needed. The board said it was best practice. The vote passed narrowly. The new rule was adopted.
But it did not matter, because the court ruling had already established the limit. The guideline could regulate new installations, but it could not retroactively affect permitted equipment. More importantly, it required architectural review, something the HOA had bypassed entirely during enforcement. The board now had to follow its own process. They had lost discretion. The compliance officer's role changed. Inspections were reduced. Notices became slower. Citations included detailed references. Enforcement logs were kept more carefully. Residents noticed. Not immediately, but gradually. A neighbor down the street installed solar equipment. It was reviewed, approved, inspected. No citation followed. Another homeowner replaced a driveway gate. The HOA requested documentation instead of issuing fines. The pattern shifted. The HOA had learned.
Internally, board members were replaced. The next election cycle brought quieter candidates, people who spoke about clarity and process. The former chair did not run again. The homeowner did not attend those meetings. He continued charging his vehicle. The charger remained visible. No further inspections occurred. Months later, the HOA sent a generic compliance reminder to all residents about exterior modifications. It included a link to updated guidelines and emphasized advance approval. No examples were shown. No photos were circulated. The homeowner received no messages. The city closed its inquiry. The court case was cited in no newsletters. It was not discussed publicly. But it existed. It became a reference point. When a different homeowner challenged a fine for a permitted antenna, the HOA rescinded it quietly. When another questioned a driveway notice, the board requested clarification before acting. Authority was no longer assumed. It had to be demonstrated. The homeowner never spoke about the case. He did not post online. He did not tell neighbors. He did not offer advice unless asked. When someone did ask, casually, how he had resolved the charger issue, he said only that he had asked for clarification. That was true. The system had done the rest. The HOA still existed. It still enforced rules. It still issued notices. But it no longer moved first. It no longer escalated without foundation, because it had learned that documentation cuts both ways. The charger remained. The driveway remained. The rules remained, but now within their boundaries. There was no victory moment, no celebration, just the quiet correction of an overreach that had documented itself into irrelevance. Nothing happened the following month. No inspection vehicle slowed in front of the house. No notices appeared in the portal. No emails arrived reminding the homeowner of compliance deadlines. The driveway remained exactly as it had been from the beginning. The charger stayed mounted. The cable stayed neatly secured. The vehicle charged during off-peak hours. Nothing happened. This was unusual. For years, enforcement in the community had been visible. Notices came quickly, photos circulated, compliance officers acted with certainty.
Silence had never been part of the pattern, but now silence held.
The HOA did not test its authority again. It did not send a courtesy check. It did not request a follow-up inspection. It did not reclassify the driveway under a different rule. It did not attempt a new theory. It adjusted. Quietly. The compliance portal changed wording. Violation became review. Enforcement action became compliance inquiry. Automated deadlines were softened. Discretion was replaced with process. Residents noticed fewer citations. They noticed more forms. The homeowner noticed nothing. He did not receive apologies. He did not receive explanations. He did not receive confirmation that he had been right. That was fine, because the point had never been to win. It had been to stop something that should not have happened in the first place. Months later, a new homeowner asked the board whether EV chargers were allowed. The board referred them to the architectural guidelines and recommended submitting plans in advance. No threats were issued. No fines were mentioned. The board followed procedure. That was the change. The homeowner heard about this secondhand. He did not involve himself. He did not attend the meeting. He did not provide documents. He had already done enough. The charger continued to function. Utility statements continued to arrive. Charging remained economical. Nothing about the homeowner's behavior changed after the ruling, because nothing about it had ever been wrong. The HOA continued to exist. It continued to enforce rules, but its confidence had been replaced with caution, not fear, caution. That distinction mattered, because fear leads to retaliation, caution leads to restraint. The HOA never formally acknowledged the overreach. It never admitted error. It never revised the original citations publicly, but it did not repeat them. That was the correction. The system had recognized its own boundary, not through confrontation, but through record. The homeowner's file remained closed. The enforcement category was never reinstated. No liens were filed. No collections letters arrived. Time passed. The charger aged like any other fixture. It became unremarkable. Neighbors stopped noticing it entirely. Children rode bikes past the driveway without looking. The charger did not win. It simply remained. And in that remaining, it proved something quiet and important. That authority depends on precision. That discretion requires limits. That documentation does not argue, it reveals. The HOA had walked into the trap by choice. Each notice had been optional. Each escalation had been voluntary. Each written assertion had narrowed their position until there was nowhere left to stand. The homeowner had never pushed. He had only stayed still, and when the system tried to move around him, it recorded itself doing so. There was no dramatic ending, no final confrontation, no speech, just a return to normal, this time within the rules. The homeowner unplugged his vehicle one morning and drove away. The driveway was empty. The charger was still visible. Nothing happened. And that was how the story ended. Not with punishment, not with revenge, but with a boundary quietly restored because someone understood that the most effective response to abuse of authority is not resistance, but clarity. If stories like this matter to you, where authority is tested not by confrontation, but by clarity, consider subscribing. These cases don't end with noise. They end when the record speaks for itself.